When we talk about improving our health, we often think about isolated actions, eating better, exercising more, getting enough sleep. These are essential, of course. But what's often missing from the conversation is how deeply our health is shaped by the relationship between our brain and our body. This connection isn't just philosophical, it's biological, and it's happening every second of the day. The stronger and more conscious this connection becomes, the more we can influence our well-being in powerful, lasting ways. Your brain isn't just sitting up there in your skull issuing commands like a boss barking orders. It's in a constant dialogue with your body, receiving input and adjusting output accordingly. Think of it as a two-way street. Your brain sends signals to your organs, muscles, and glands, but it also listens closely to the feedback it gets from your heart rate, your gut, your immune system, even your posture and facial expressions. This feedback influences your mental state, your decisions, and even your sense of motivation. When that feedback loop is strong, your health improves from the inside out. We often underestimate how much our physiology affects our psychology. For example, something as subtle as shallow breathing can tell the brain you're stressed, even if there's no real threat. That signal kicks off a chain reaction. Elevated cortisol, increased heart rate, narrowed focus, all of which keep your body in a state of tension. And the more this state persists, the more your brain adapts to it as the norm. So we start to live in a loop where the body tells the brain we're under siege and the brain keeps the body prepared for battle, even when we're just sitting in traffic or scrolling through our phones. That's not sustainable. But here's the good news. You're not stuck in that loop. You can actually influence that feedback in real time using your body to send calming, focused signals back to your brain. This is where the idea of brain-body connection becomes incredibly empowering. You can change your internal state without waiting for external conditions to improve. That means you're not at the mercy of your environment. You're an active participant in your health. Let's take posture as an example. Most people don't realize that how you carry yourself literally changes how your brain perceives the world. Standing tall with shoulders back doesn't just project confidence. It actually helps signal to your brain that you're safe, capable, and alert. That shifts your hormonal profile, your attention, and even your memory encoding. In other words, by changing your body, you can change your brain's operating state. Another powerful element of this connection is the vagus nerve, which runs from the brainstem down to the gut and controls a large part of your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode. Stimulating this nerve through slow, diaphragmatic breathing or humming can increase vagal tone, which is associated with reduced anxiety, better immune function, and improved emotional regulation. It's like having a built-in switch that helps you downshift from fight or flight into a state of calm clarity. What's really fascinating is that the brain doesn't necessarily distinguish between real and perceived experiences in terms of its response. If your body acts like it's in a calm, focused state, slow breathing, relaxed muscles, soft gaze, your brain takes that as evidence that you are in fact safe. This is a powerful insight because it means you don't need to wait to feel calm before acting that way. You can flip the process, act the way you want to feel, and your brain will start to follow. So when we talk about improving health, we're not just talking about doing more. We're talking about becoming more aware of this intricate, ongoing dialogue between your brain and your body. And by learning to guide that dialogue intentionally, you're not just optimizing your physical health, you're upgrading your entire experience of being alive. Because the real transformation starts when you stop seeing your brain and body as separate and start treating them as one integrated, powerful system. One of the most powerful concepts in science and in life is neuroplasticity. At its core, it means your brain is capable of change. Not just in childhood, not just after some big life event, but every single day. The brain isn't fixed. It's constantly rewiring itself based on what you focus on, what you repeat, what you care about, and what you do. That's incredibly good news for anyone looking to improve their health because it means you're not stuck. No matter your current habits, challenges, or even your genetic starting point, you can influence the structure and function of your brain through action. The key is understanding that change doesn't happen from wishful thinking. It happens through repetition and emotional engagement. Every time you do something, especially something with a clear intention or strong emotional value, you're strengthening specific neural circuits. Those circuits become more efficient. They fire faster. They become your default. So if you've built habits over the years that aren't serving your health, it's not because you lack willpower. It's because your brain has been wired by repetition, often unconsciously. And the beautiful thing about plasticity is that the same process that wired those habits can be used to rewire better ones. Let's make that real. Suppose you're trying to start a new health routine. Maybe it's daily movement, better nutrition, consistent sleep. The first few days are hard, not because you're weak, but because the neural pathways for those behaviors aren't well established yet. They take more energy, more conscious effort. But each time you repeat them, especially if you do it with intention and even just a little bit of emotional reward like pride, gratitude, or excitement, you're teaching your brain that this is important. Over time, the brain starts to automate that process. That's what a habit really is. A shortcut created by the brain to save energy on something it expects to repeat. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The brain doesn't change simply because you do something over and over. It changes when there's attention involved, when you're focused, even slightly, on the process. This is why multitasking often weakens the brain-body connection. If you're exercising while answering emails or eating while scrolling through your phone, your brain isn't fully registering the activity. And without that attention, the rewiring doesn't stick nearly as well. Focus isn't just about productivity, it's about telling the brain, this matters, reinforce this. One of the best things you can do to strengthen your brain-body connection and support lasting health is to deliberately engage in behaviors that reflect the identity you want to build. Not just going through the motions, but actively thinking, I'm becoming someone who moves every day, or I'm reinforcing my ability to rest well. Those statements aren't fluff. They guide your neurochemistry. When your actions align with your internal narrative, the brain locks it in much faster. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means returning to the path again and again, even when you veer off. Every time you return, you're telling your brain, this is still the direction we're headed. And the brain listens. It adjusts. It reinforces. That's why one of the most powerful tools for health isn't doing more, it's doing with more intention and awareness. One conscious repetition is worth more than 10 distracted ones. Well, it's also important to remember that neuroplasticity doesn't just apply to motor habits or routines. It applies to emotional patterns too. If you constantly respond to stress with anxiety, your brain gets better at producing that response. But if you start introducing micro moments of calm in those same situations, like a slow exhale, a shift in posture, or a deliberate pause, you start to rewire your emotional patterns as well. That's the deeper level of health, not just the absence of disease, but the presence of inner adaptability. And the more you understand this, the more empowering it becomes. You don't have to wait for motivation. You don't have to wait for the perfect plan. All you need is to take action in a focused, repeated, emotionally engaged way. Because that's how the brain learns. And when the brain learns, the body follows. One of the most accessible and overlooked tools we have for improving both brain and body health is movement, alongside something as fundamental as breath. These aren't just add-ons to a healthy lifestyle. They are foundational systems that shape how we think, feel, and perform. The body is designed to move, and the brain is designed to track, support, and adapt to that movement. When you understand how physical activity and breath control affect your internal state, you begin to realize you have more control over your health than you might have thought. The moment you begin to move, even something as simple as walking, the brain kicks into gear. Neural circuits related to planning, coordination, memory, and even creativity light up. Walking outdoors, especially in natural light, sends powerful signals to the brain that help regulate mood and energy levels. Your eyes start scanning, your heart rate increases slightly, and your breathing deepens. All of that creates a cascade of chemical and electrical activity that strengthens the connection between your mind and your physical state. It's like a reset button you can press at any time. You don't need to run a marathon or lift heavy weights to get these benefits. Just a few minutes of intentional movement can shift your neurochemistry. When you move your body with purpose, especially if it's rhythmic and sustained, like walking, light jogging, or cycling, You begin to release neurochemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine. These help boost motivation, attention, and drive. They also reduce feelings of anxiety and lethargy. Your brain registers that something productive is happening, and it starts to align your mood and energy with that. But there's another layer that most people miss: your breath. Unlike your heartbeat or digestion, breath is one of the few autonomic functions you can consciously control. That makes it a powerful bridge between the brain and body. When you're stressed, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid, and that sends a signal to the brain that you're in danger. But if you slow your breathing, especially by extending your exhales, you flip that signal. You're telling the brain and body that you're safe, calm, and in control. That single shift can change your physiological state within seconds. One of the most effective breathing techniques involves taking a double inhale through the nose, followed by a long exhale through the mouth. This physiological sigh helps reduce carbon dioxide levels in the blood, lowers your heart rate, and calms your nervous system almost instantly. It's your built-in system for regulating stress, and it's available to you anytime, anywhere. That's not just useful, it's transformative. Pairing breathwork with movement amplifies these effects. For example, walking while consciously breathing through your nose improves oxygen uptake, lowers blood pressure, and enhances mental clarity. These simple adjustments, done consistently, create long-term adaptations in your nervous system. Your body becomes more resilient, your brain becomes more focused, and your baseline level of well-being shifts upward. The connection between how you move, how you breathe, and how you feel isn't abstract. It's measurable and it's trainable. And when you learn to use those tools with consistency and awareness, they stop being tasks on a checklist. They become levers you can pull to improve your health from the inside out. One of the most overlooked drivers of brain and body health is how we manage our focus and sleep, and more specifically, how we align both with our natural circadian rhythms. Most people think of focus as something they either have or don't, and sleep is a box to check at the end of the day. But the reality is both are deeply interconnected and regulated by powerful internal clocks that influence everything from hormone levels to mood, metabolism, and cognition. Your brain and body operate on a roughly 24-hour cycle known as the circadian rhythm. This rhythm is controlled by a master clock in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which responds to light, especially early in the day. When you get natural light in your eyes within the first hour after waking, it sets off a cascade of biological events that regulate energy, alertness, and hormone timing. It tells your brain the day has started. That signal triggers the release of cortisol in healthy levels, not the stress-induced spike we often associate with it, but a natural rise that helps wake us up, increases focus, and primes us for the day ahead. Without that light exposure, your brain's internal clock gets confused, your energy levels may crash in the afternoon, your focus becomes inconsistent, and by nighttime, your body might not feel ready to sleep, even if you're exhausted. That misalignment adds up over time, weakening the brain-body connection and making it harder to recover, perform, and stay mentally sharp. But the solution doesn't require drastic changes. Simply stepping outside in the morning, even on a cloudy day, for 5 to 10 minutes can make a measurable difference. That small habit creates a reliable anchor for your circadian system. The way we manage focus throughout the day also has a huge impact on brain-body health. Most of us spend our days in fragmented attention, jumping from one notification to the next, multitasking, and rarely entering deep, sustained focus. The brain thrives on cycles of high focus effort followed by intentional rest. When we work in focused blocks, say 90 minutes of deep work, followed by a 10 to 15 minute break, we align more closely with the natural ultradian rhythms that guide our mental performance. Those breaks aren't wasted time. They are where recovery happens, where insights form, and where the nervous system resets. Now let's connect that to sleep. Good sleep doesn't start at bedtime. It starts the moment you wake up. When your circadian rhythm is aligned through morning light and balanced periods of focus and rest, your body starts preparing for sleep hours in advance. Melatonin, the hormone that signals the brain it's time to rest, begins to rise naturally. But if you're looking at bright screens late at night or stimulating your brain right before bed, you're sending the opposite signal. Telling your brain it's still daytime, that delays melatonin, disrupts sleep quality, and weakens recovery. Consistent sleep and focus patterns don't just help you feel better. They enhance everything from immune function to memory consolidation to emotional regulation. When your sleep is deep and your focus is structured, your body repairs itself more efficiently, your brain becomes more adaptable, and your sense of internal stability grows. These rhythms, once dialed in, become the scaffolding for every other positive habit you want to build. Stress is often painted as the villain in conversations about health, but the truth is stress isn't the enemy, it's a signal. It's your body's way of preparing you to rise to a challenge, to sharpen your focus, to increase your readiness. The problem isn't stress itself, it's how long we stay in that heightened state without recovery. If stress becomes constant without moments of downshifting into calm and restoration, it turns from something adaptive into something damaging. But when used strategically, stress can actually become a tool for growth. Your body has two main modes of operation, one for alertness and action, and another for rest and recovery. The first is governed by the sympathetic nervous system, the so-called fight or flight mode. The second is controlled by the parasympathetic system, which helps you slow down, digest, recover, and repair. Both systems are essential, but most people today are stuck in the first one for too long. The notifications, the deadlines, the noise, all of it keeps the body on alert. And over time, that wears you down. What most people don't realize is that you can train your nervous system to switch gears more efficiently. You can get better at recognizing when you're tense and actively guide yourself back to calm. Something as simple as softening your visual field, allowing your gaze to go wide instead of narrow, sends a signal to the brain that you're not under immediate threat. That alone can begin to shift your state. Posture matters too. When you're upright, breathing slowly, and grounded in your body, the brain reads that as safety. Even your inner dialogue plays a role. The words you say to yourself during stress influence how long that stress lingers. If you can recognize the moment and think, this is activation, my body's preparing me to respond, you're less likely to get caught in the spiral of anxiety. That reframing changes your chemistry. It turns stress into a signal you can work with instead of something you feel trapped in. And then recovery becomes the other side of the equation. When you know how to intentionally access calm through breath, movement, or mindset, you allow the stress system to reset. This isn't about escaping stress, but learning to work with it. Building that skill creates a more resilient body, a more flexible mind, and a deeper trust in your ability to handle what life brings. There's one element that often gets missed when we talk about the brain-body connection, and that's emotional regulation. Not just managing how we feel, but understanding how emotions physically show up in the body and how our ability to navigate those feelings shapes our overall health. Emotions aren't just abstract experiences, they're biological events. They arise from brain-body communication loops and directly influence things like heart rate, hormone release, digestion, and immune function. So the way we respond to emotions doesn't just affect how we feel, it affects how we function. When you feel anxious, your heart rate increases, your breathing changes, your muscles tense. When you're angry, your vision may narrow, your blood pressure rises, and your brain prepares for confrontation. These physical shifts aren't accidental. They're your body responding to signals from your brain, preparing for action. But if we never learn how to downshift, how to notice these reactions and respond skillfully, they can become chronic patterns. And chronic emotional reactivity, especially to stress, frustration, or fear, can keep the nervous system in a constant state of imbalance. This is where awareness becomes powerful. When you start to tune into the physical signatures of your emotions, tight chest, clenched jaw, rapid breathing, you can begin to intervene. You can take a breath before reacting. You can ground your feet, relax your shoulders, shift your posture. These small physical changes send powerful signals back to the brain that help reset your emotional state. You're not suppressing the emotion. You're guiding it. You're staying in the driver's seat. Practicing emotional regulation builds a sense of internal control. It trains your nervous system to respond rather than react. Over time, this changes the baseline of how you feel day to day. You become less thrown off by external events. Your mood stabilizes. You have more mental clarity and physical resilience because your brain and body aren't constantly bracing for impact. That creates space to think clearly, to listen, to choose your response instead of being driven by. What's even more encouraging is that this is a skill anyone can develop. You don't need to be emotionally perfect. You just need to practice awareness, pause, and reset. Whether through breath, movement, journaling, or simply noticing your state in the moment, each time you regulate, you're reinforcing new neural circuits. And that builds a foundation not just for emotional well-being, but for a more integrated, healthy, and empowered life. So when we talk about improving health through a stronger brain-body connection, we're really talking about stepping into the driver's seat of our own biology. We're talking about using movement, breath, focus, rest, emotional regulation, and deliberate action to create lasting change, not just in how we feel, but in how we function at every level. The tools are simple, the science is clear, and the potential is enormous. Every step you take with awareness, every breath you guide with intention, every moment you shift from reaction to response, that's how transformation begins. And it begins from within.